Whoever reads this is Matt. And this is one of my incomplete cases. If you can see it, then I want you to wrap things up for me. This case covers a very fucked up individual, known on the deep web as the Crib Snatcher. Now, before you read any further, look at that name again. This man is one of those cretins who find it acceptable to place children in pornographic settings. All evidence I have has images omitted for obvious reasons. That sick fuck has a lot of images though. I'll leave it at that. I've worked with hackers to take down his content before, but we've never been able to positively ID the guy. Seems like he's a ghost. Even authorities have paid attention after many tip-offs from us, but to no avail. All the info we have on him is included with this file. After reading this, I knew I had to help bring this fucker down. I had no clue where to start though. The information was minimal and just contained online aliases that were quite dated. I knew I'd have to ask around about him. The thing is, asking about a child pornographer doesn't make you look very good. I had to go about this very carefully. In my time on the deep web, I'd also met justice warriors who'd hunt down these specific individuals and bring down their content. I contacted one of them. I'm going to call them Plastic. Plastic was one of the whistleblowers on Daisy's destruction and helped bring down Peter Scully. If you've never heard of the film or Scully, it's one of the few times the deep web has leaked onto the clear net. Well, I contacted Plastic and asked about a few of the aliases and gave them a quick rundown of how I got a hold of them. Plastic didn't know anything about all but one of the aliases. Apparently, one of the aliases had been IP tracked a while ago by Plastic and some of their accomplices. Apparently, this guy's been tracked a few times, but any found addresses were shells or public places. It seemed he really was elusive. Up until now, I haven't given this man a name, but I'll refer to him as this known alias herein. That alias is Long Exposure 1975. Problem me and Plastic had was that Long Exposure was hard to get a hold of. Turns out everything he did was commissioned. That means the numerous images traced back to him were just leaks. If you don't know what that means, it means we'd only seen the tip of the iceberg. We didn't really have a good place to begin, but we did have his last traced IP. It had him placed in a UK mall using the public Wi-Fi a few weeks ago. Turns out, after Matt stopped following Long Exposure, he kept going and was still tracked by some of Plastic's acquaintances. The location hadn't been reported, as police apparently won't act on uploads from public places. Too open to speculation. Well, to me and Plastic, that was bullshit. We got lucky with the fact he lives in the UK. It meant I could check things out. Plastic set me up with some tools of the trade that simplified what I was going there to do. I'd have to hack into the intranet at the mall to gain access to the security camera system. From there, I should be able to download archive footage from the date of the upload and attempt to find Long Exposure at the mall. The hardest part should be finding an Ethernet port to hook my laptop up to. I set off for the mall. The town it was in was a fair drive away from my apartment, so I had to set out pretty early. By the time I got there, I was dying for a caffeine boost, so I headed for a small, unbranded coffee shop and downed an espresso like Jaeger on a Saturday night. From there I began my quest for an Ethernet port. I never knew how hard this would actually be, but I eventually found a computer store that ran repairs. I knew they'd have usable Ethernet ports in there somewhere. I went in under the premise of getting my laptop's Wi-Fi fixed. I stressed that the Ether port worked fine, but it wouldn't connect to Wi-Fi. Before going in, I ran some of the scripts Plastic had supplied to me. The moment he'd plug it into the Ethernet, it'd start running the programs that would gain administrative access and let me access all connected devices. From there, I could run the snooper Plastic supplied to gain access to the computer responsible for the CCTV. The store clerk happily took my laptop off my hands and came back to me a few minutes later, telling me I'd just turned my Wi-Fi off. I feigned embarrassment and thanked him for helping. He didn't charge me, probably because he found it funny how stupid someone would have to be to miss that. Once away from the store, I connected to the closed network with the credentials Plastic's code had stolen. Once inside, I gained access to the CCTV computer as planned. This was where there was a hiccup. The drives the CCTV archives were stored on required a password to access. I had no clue where to begin, and Plastic hadn't supplied me with any way to get around this. I decided it was time to do some detective work. I could access the PC's Outlook application from my laptop. I filtered through the emails to try and find any emails about passwords. All I found was one from a few months ago about the access to the drives being restricted to the mall management. I'd have to find out who had that password. I backed out to the list of connected computers and found one marked Management 001 and connected to it. It seems the last logged-in user was a lady by the name of Anne Wilkins. Obviously, I changed the name here. I decided I'd have to get a hold of her and get her to hand over the files herself. But there was no way she'd hand over the files to a random guy. I'd have to go about this a different way. I went through her emails and found the name of her boss. I then logged into his account and sent an email from it telling her that a police detective by the name of Ryan would be coming to collect CCTV files in reference to an ongoing case. I added that, due to the sensitivity of the case, she wasn't to ask about anything. I'd just have to hope that she wouldn't ask for ID, because if she did, I'd have to blag my way through it. I got a prompt reply from her saying she'd head down to customer service and wait for Ryan there. I made my way over, practically shaking from anxiety over what would happen if this went wrong. Impersonating an officer was a pretty serious crime. When I arrived, I gave my name and asked for her. She came out and greeted me. She looked a bit aged and weary. I took that as a good sign and showed her my driver's license. She read it and smiled. A small chill of relief ran through me. "Sure thing, officer. I grabbed the files from the date you asked for. I even got them in a USB stick for you." I laughed a little and accepted the flash drive. "Thank you, ma'am. I just hope it'll get us closer on this case." She continued her well-practiced smile and added, "Also, officer, if you're thirsty or hungry, you can drop by Chauffeur's on the way out and grab a coffee and a bite on me. Just say Anne referred you." I nodded and thanked her. Well, I'd just have to take her up on that offer. I grabbed myself a cappuccino and grilled cheese. I sat at one of the tables and began sifting through the files. The only thing I had to go on was the 1975 in long exposure's name and the posting time. I was looking for a 43-year-old man who was using a mobile device at 6 p.m. I had my work cut out for me. I had to watch about 20 minutes worth of footage to account for upload time with tens of cameras to look through. After overstaying my freebies, I paid for my own coffee a few more times. I managed to track the potential culprits down to 5 people when I realized I was still logged into Anne's boss's email. I saw he'd received one from her saying she'd handed over the CCTV files to me, and one was sent from him mere minutes ago saying he'd never heard anything about Orion. I was rumbled. I had to get the fuck out of there, and fast. I got out of the coffee shop. Right by the exit, there were 6 guards, all of them clearly waiting for me. Another 2 were heading towards the coffee shop. I ducked into the subway next door and sat down. I was hoping I wouldn't have to use this, but Plastic had given me a last resort, aptly called nuke.exe. I didn't know exactly what it would do, but she told me I'd have to get ready to run after using it. I ran it. After 5 seconds, the PA system screeched and all the electronics cut out. There were a good few shouts as the PA screeched, followed by confused mutters and shouts from security for everyone to stay calm. People began filtering out the main entrance. I joined them, taking my leave of them all unawares to the security. Once I was safely home, I watched all of the potential culprits' visits from beginning to end. 2 of them were with families, so I doubted it would be them. Another one seemed to be there for a business meeting. This checked them off for now. And that left me with 2 people. One of them didn't seem too suspicious. They just went to the supermarket and got groceries, got a coffee, and left. The other, however, did something quite creepy, given who they might be. They went to a children's clothing outlet and bought what seemed to be girls' clothes and some stuffed toys. I marked him up as my prime suspect. I traced his exit. He had an old Ford. Luckily, the entrance exit to the car park had a higher quality camera to read plates. I got his plate number and called it a day. I sent my findings to Plastic and caught some sleep. I woke up just a few hours later. Plastic had gotten the files I'd sent and ran the plate using a colleague of theirs. It belonged to a John Barden. Now that is a real name. Normally I would censor names, but I'm making a special case here. I don't condone witch hunts, but do what you will. She'd forwarded the name to informants, and apparently a case was being built. I felt a little bit of closure as I finished off the first of Matt's unfinished cases. But, well, I'd barely begun. There were still more cases to go, and I had a lot of work ahead. Looks like I'm just getting started with the case files. Thanks for taking the time to drop by and watch this video. You know what would make me a happy doctor? Hitting that like button, leaving a comment, and subscribing to my channel. Go on, I've got plenty more stories to tell you.